So this is the day when we start taking out the engine of the Lotus. I've already removed the bonnet, which was held in by a couple of screws, so on that side and that side. Got my father in to help me. We're not quite ready to put him in the scrap heap yet, but it's his birthday today as well, so but he likes doing this kind of thing. So yeah, I've never done an engine before. I've taken an engine or a gearbox, taken an engine and the gearbox out of a car, so it's a learning process. But
where do you want to put these bits?
Yeah, I'll put them in the garage actually. I removed the air filter, and now we just have to unbolt the air filter cover. So there's, I think, 8 bolts in total in there. Let's see what's holding that in. So the air filter cover's off. Now I'll probably proceed to take the carburetors off, which are held in by these bolts here. So 1, 2, I think there's 2 underneath them as well, and the same on this side. The throttle cable is here, like that. That's the choke cable is there, and the vacuum pipes there. That goes onto the air filter box. Okay, so I'll proceed with unbolting those 8 bolts. Carburetor's nearly off. Just want to indicate that that goes onto there. And there's another one there. So after the carburetor, the next thing to come off is the brake booster pipe. Turn that and get it off. The next thing that's coming out is this fan shroud, which is held on by 6 bolts. So 3 at the bottom and 3 here at the top. 1, 2 and 3. So I was just giving it the earth for the electric motors, which are completely seized. A bit of a squirt with WD-40.
This is empty.
So the next thing I'm going to try and remove is the oil cooler. There are 2 bolts down there, and there's supposed to be 2 bolts down there, but there's only 1 at the moment, so I'll unscrew those. I'll have to unscrew it from there as well, these 2 pipes here. We'll get to those in a minute. So the bolts are removed. They were surprisingly awkward. That can now lift off, so I'll try and undo the big nuts there at the side and bottom here. There. See if I can remove it. I can loosen these nuts here, but that one, which is the one that should turn, is proving a little bit awkward at the moment, so I'll see what I can do with it in a minute. So I'm going to try and remove these 2 bolts here. That one. This one's proven a little bit awkward and a little bit tighter than I thought, so I'm going to have to either leave it on and deal with it later, or find some way of levering it off. But let me think about what I can do. So I've just sprayed it a bit with WD-40, held it upside down a bit, and I'll let that sit for a while. Hopefully it'll loosen. I'll be able to loosen it afterwards. What I'll do in the meantime is I'll start on the radiator. There's hidden bolts to remove the radiator. There's one underneath there, it's a 10mm bolt, and there's one at the other side hidden there. So when I remove those, obviously the pipe here, which is holding it in place, it should just drop down. But I'm going to replace the radiator anyway. It's seen better days, so I'll remove it in the meantime. Yeah, the radiator on an XL is a tight fit, but it is coming out. I'll just wrestle that a bit more and drop it out of the bottom. Finally dropped out. It's a very tight fit, that thing. The two bolts, it's secured at the two bolts at the top, and obviously the connections through the two pipes there. But it eventually does come out. As you can see, it's seen a bit better days. It's ready, but I have already bought a new one, and it's in the basement downstairs, so it shouldn't be an issue. So the next thing I'm going to focus on is underneath the car. We're going to remove the clutch slave cylinder and the speedometer cable. I also need to drain the gearbox oil out in there. So I'll get underneath the car now and show you. So I need to remove these two for the slave cylinder. I need to remove these two bolts. That should come out. I don't need to cut any cables or anything like that. I can just pull that up through the bonnet. Then I need to drain the gearbox oil, which will probably be from here. Disconnect the exhaust pipe, probably from there at the back. And there should be a speedometer cable somewhere. I think it's towards the back of it. I think this is it here. So that also needs to be disconnected. And from the bottom here, I can't see, yeah, there's an electrical connection there that also needs to be disconnected. But other than that, I can't see an awful lot down here that still needs to be done. Anyway, let me get on with that. We'll disconnect the electrical connectors. So that there comes off quite easily, and one to the alternator here also comes off quite easily. So these wires here I'm going to place to the side. Now the one thing I did think of here, forgot about it actually, is the power assistance pump, power steering assistance pump, which is, I think, that thing there. That needs to come off, otherwise the steering rack's got to come off with the engine. The speedo cable was a little bit awkward to remove, but I did manage to get a set of mole grips around it, and it did unscrew that way. And, I'll re-grease it when I put it back on, and hopefully it won't be so difficult next time. So I'll proceed to disconnect the cables to the starter motor there, and also to the alternator here. Yeah, actually I don't need to disconnect that. That can stay on, although when I loosen that it'll come off anyway. But these cables here, certainly they need to come off because they're attached somewhere. And I think this electrical cable here to the distributor also needs to come off. So let's have a look what's going on there. That's connected to the alternator, so I'll leave that off. The next thing I'm going to do now is remove the pipes. So there's some pipe there. I'm going to remove that pipe there and that pipe there. Also I'm going to remove the coolant expansion tank there, which is bolted underneath the wheel with 3 bolts there. I'll displace that water bottle and check as well what I might need to displace for the power steering pump. I might just remove the power steering pump directly at its source, otherwise the steering rack would have to come off as well. And then I think the only thing I need to do is unbolt the gear lever, and in theory I think I should be able to start lifting things. I'm just seeing there, is that the coil pack that's connected? Yeah, so that needs to be disconnected too. Easy enough. I'll leave that in there. That connects directly to the coil pack. Yeah, so let me unbolt the pipes. So I managed to remove the what do you call it, the coolant expansion tank there. Disconnected also all the pipes here. Removed the power steering pump here, which was connected to with one bolt there, and the adjuster for the cable for the what do you call it, the belt tensioner. There's another bolt there at the bottom. I did run into some problems though. As you can see, I've already attached the straps for lifting the engine out. I did run into some problems here with the engine mounts. Two of these bolts came out, no problem. This one, it just rounded. They were so rusty, they just rounded, so I had to weld another bolt on top of that. I managed to loosen it. I had to first remove the oil filter, which also allowed me to move the oil cooler, which was there, because I could remove it directly from this bit here rather than unbolt the pipes themselves. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and file this bolt down here, which I've already tried to weld another nut on top of it, but it didn't. I wasn't successful with that. So I'm going to try and weld another nut on top of that and see if I can loosen it now, so that this engine mount will come off. I'll replace this bolt before I try and loosen that one though. Anyway, let's see how I get on with that. So after about 2 hours of swearing, frustration, trying, I finally managed to get enough purchase to get this bolt out of the engine mounting. So that's now coming out. That will come out. I'll tighten that up again just to loosen this. As I can say, a lot of swearing and a lot of trying. That's the graveyard of bolts that I've been trying to solve this problem with. I wasn't getting enough purchase, enough weld on the actual nut itself, and as soon as I tried to unscrew it, it would just snap straight off. So I had to use one of the bigger nuts to get enough purchase on the weld, and that eventually worked. But I was a bit worried about using the bigger nut in case I couldn't turn it around the engine. You know, it gets stuck. Basically, the side of the nut there would get stuck around the engine mount, and it would cause problems and maybe snap off. So then I'll probably put this video together now, and yeah, the actual lifting of the engine, I think I'll put that in a separate video. But it's all done now, so I just have to remove the engine mounts at the bottom on this side and at the bottom on that side, and in theory, well, obviously still have to remove that water bottle there, but in theory the engine should just pull out. But as I say, I'll do it in another video and show you what's required. As I say, with the gear stick, it was very easy to remove. I thought it was going to be a bit of a problem, but essentially there was a rubber bit over the top of it, and you just remove those 4 bolts and pull it out. Fairly simple, but again, I thought it was something that was a bit more complicated, but it wasn't. So there you go. I'm ready for part 2. Stay tuned.